In this video, I will introduce myself more formally, and also discuss the way legal gender works. I used to study history, but since it turns out that half of the world doesn't really care about history anymore, as we descend into a flaming pool of lava around this dance around the... So instead I studied acting, because as we all know, struggling actors are the ones that people really listen to. After university, I became an activist and an artist. However, it turns out that people really don't care about activism if you're an artist. And here I am, instead, on YouTube, trying, failing. The rest of this video is going to be about legal gender. In most of the world, there are two legal genders, much to the delight of my YouTube comments and much to the chagrin of, like, real people. When you are born, you get assigned one of these two genders. You are assigned a gender. You are assigned a gender at birth. Sometimes this assignment is incorrect. That can be because the child is intersex, and the doctor simply didn't know. Or the child is trans, and no one knew until later. When a child is born, sometimes it can be hard to accurately assign a gender. A consequence of this is that sometimes people want to change that gender. They want to change from one legal gender to another. And since mistakes can be made for a variety of reasons, you'd think this process would be easy. Well, fellow, I have some bad news for you, cowboy. It's gonna be a bad news for you. In most countries, there isn't a routine for changing your legal gender, which means that the only way to change your legal gender is to go to the courts and convince a judge to do it for you. And this is the way trans people used to change their gender, before routines were set into place. And most of the world still does this. Until the 70s, this was the only way to actually change your legal gender, because there was no other routine for how to do it. The new way is vastly different country to country, and sometimes even clinic to clinic, and sometimes even doctor to doctor. But it is the way most Western countries do it these days. Basically now, a diagnosis has to be made. Either transsexualism or gender identity disorder. You need this diagnosis to merit a legal change. That means instead of convincing a judge to change your legal gender, you have to convince a doctor. And to convince a doctor, you need a diagnosis. And to get a diagnosis, you need to fill certain criteria. Of course, this means that if you don't fill those criteria, you don't get your changed legal gender.
What is the password for the house?
The password for the house.
Yes?
I'm sorry, I seem to have forgotten it.
That's unfortunate. Because here, it doesn't matter whether you have forgotten it, or if you never knew it. You will kindly remove your mask.
This in turn means that you have to jump through hoops in order to get the doctor to believe you are what you say you are. The criteria that you have to fulfill is usually very sexist and demeaning. A very common requirement, at least in the Western world, is to be sterile, which many, including myself, see as a violation of human rights. Other criteria can range from behaving like your gender, whatever the hell that means, to sitting naked in front of a mirror while a doctor watches you describe how you hate your body. The doctor tells you, describe to me, tell me. And that's pretty fucked up, and probably the plot of like real kinky porn movies, like not good ones either. Again, we're not talking about surgery or medical intervention here. We're talking about a bureaucratic legal stamp of your gender. And instead of it being a fairly easy legal process, it's turned into this weird medicinal trial thing, where you have to convince a doctor by doing weird mirror rituals. And this can sometimes take up to 5 or 6 years which obviously takes up a lot of money and time that could be used for anything. This is the way Sweden does it, although the sterile requirement is gone now. At least here. This is the boring way, and this is going to be very complicated, so I need you to stay with me. To change your legal gender in these countries, you first have to fill out a form declaring your legal gender, and then you have to send it in to the appropriate authority. And that's it. That's it. No hoops, no judge, no court, just you fill out a form, and it's done. As you can hear, this method is the one sure to cause the least amount of controversy. There's an absurd idea that letting people self-declare their gender will somehow cause the foundations of society to collapse. They want to erase all genders. How this collapse is going to happen, they have never fully explained. Mostly because it has never happened. Several countries already do self-declaration of gender, and it works fine. Also, this wouldn't just help trans people changing legal gender. It will help anyone who would, for some reason or another, have to change their legal gender. It becomes a bureaucratic issue rather than a medicinal one. And for all you cynics out there, this saves money. Instead of this having to be a long, drawn-out process over years and years and years, this can be as simple as filing a form at the DMV. Like, sure, it's boring, but it's so much cheaper and more effective than the system that we currently have. But it's also easier and cheaper than having a doctor poke and prod at you for years. And 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 years. If you think this method is somehow going to change the amount of trans people in your life, don't worry. Trans people have always existed, and this is just a way for them to get legal recognition a bit easier. Giving trans people access to something that more accurately represents who we are helps everyone, not just trans people. Other countries already have this. Ireland has this, Malta has this, and if the Catholics can manage this, I think most of the world can too. And if self-declaration of your own gender was harmful, wouldn't these countries already have result of that? It's almost like there is no logical argument against allowing trans people to live full and complete lives without legal obstacles. Especially since the alternative, fighting for a diagnosis, simply adds to the stress of being a minority and has a real human cost. Thanks for watching my video. If you're interested in watching more content in the future, I'd love if you'd subscribe to my channel and also maybe leave a comment as to what I do next week, or maybe just something that is nice, like say hi. Say that I do good content, please prove to me that my degree wasn't worthless. If you're interested in supporting me financially for some god-awful reason, you can also visit me on Patreon.